Hey, this is Tim from AK Endless Sports Cards. Well, this is actually take 2 of today's video. I was outside earlier today and it was just absolutely gorgeous out there. It was almost 80 degrees, but it was very windy and I was kind of crossing my fingers that the audio would come out okay. And when I went to preview everything before uploading the video, the audio was not good. So I went ahead and scrapped that, and so instead I'm in my brother's card room here, and so I'm going to do this one inside, so switching it up just a little bit for this video today. With that said, the theme of this video is assorted hobby thoughts, so there's actually a few different topics that I'm going to be looking at here tonight. So before we get started, happy Friday Eve to everybody. So today, as I'm filming, it is Thursday. I'll probably end up posting this on Friday, but with that said, hope everybody had a great Friday Eve. Going into Friday. So here we go. Point number 1. So I was reading earlier today. So I do read a lot of hobby content. I am a member of the Blowout Card forums, and I also watch a lot of YouTube content, especially when I'm off during the summer. So it's harder to do when I'm working full time, in the fall, winter, and spring. But when I'm off for the summer, I have a lot more time to be able to, research things pertaining to the hobby. And it's not strictly for this channel. I do it basically for fun, but then it kind of spurs some ideas in terms of content that I'd like to discuss on this channel. So the first one that I read about today that comes to mind is that I read earlier this morning that the 2026 show is going to be held in Atlantic City. I read it on the Blowout Card forum. Somebody had actually even posted a link to the Atlantic City site. But when I checked it again before filming this video, I saw that that link was down. And so I don't know if they just prematurely posted that. I don't know if there's been a final confirmation that it's going to be in Atlantic City in 2026. I know it's 3 years down the road, so it's not like an imminent thing anyway. And so I talked about that on a previous video. I choose not to go to Atlantic City. So if that is confirmed, I'll just plan to do a couple of different Midwestern shows. So like, a combination between like a Lansing or, Midwest Monster, Shipshawana. But this is 3 years down the road. So, a lot can change in those 3 years. I know that Fanatics has talked about becoming more involved, with different types of events. So who knows what things will actually be looking like in 3 years. So it's really hard to say. I was a little bit bummed that they didn't choose a new venue, or at least a blast from the past. In terms of venue, Atlanta was one that I had mentioned on a previous video. That to me seemed like an interesting one, just because, like I said before, I could plan a trip around that. I didn't hear Tennessee mentioned a whole lot. I see it mentioned on the Blowout forum boards at times. That would be something I would definitely be in for as well, because Tennessee is one of my favorite travel destinations. So was not to be, at least in 2026. So we'll see if how things change in the future. With that said, a second topic today. I read all about the chasing cardboard controversy. So if you're not familiar with that story, the guys from Chasing Cardboard, they have a YouTube channel, which I actually tend to watch quite a bit. Actually, I've seen quite a bit of their stuff. They kind of go around and buy up collections. Well, as part of a lot of cards that they bought, there was a Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson in-person autographed card in the lot. So they went to sell it on eBay, and a potential buyer had looked at the autograph and thought that it was iffy, basically. So what the potential buyer did was they actually went through JSA, James Spence Authentication, and they paid for their quick opinion. So if you're not familiar with how that works, companies like JSA, James Spence Authentication, PSA DNA, these types of companies that authenticate autographs and memorabilia, they offer a service where you can, for example, enter in an eBay auction number, and they'll analyze something that's been signed in person and give you their opinion that, hey, if you were to submit this for full authentication, it's either likely, unlikely to pass, whatever the case may be. And as you can imagine, which is the controversy, this is where the controversy starts, the Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson card came up unlikely to pass. So, doesn't sound so bad yet. So my understanding, I'm not sure if the person paid. If they did, they had a refund. And so you'd think that would be the end of it. Unfortunately, the card got relisted. And that's where the problem comes up, because my understanding was there wasn't anything in the description about, it coming up unlikely to pass, whatever the case may be. And so there was a segment on Sports Card Radio about it as well. And eventually they took the second listing down. And so, I'm not the guy who's going to run a channel to rip on other groups of people. I understand that not everything's rainbows and gumdrops, and you can't be positive with everything either. But the purpose of me bringing this up wasn't to, try to, tear these guys down and rip on these guys, because I've seen them enough on a lot of their videos and things like that to think that they're pretty good guys. But what I hope comes out of this, though, is that, if you're a seller and you have an in-person autograph, if you have access to these things like Quick Opinion, maybe do that prior to posting those types of items on eBay. That way, at least you have that knowledge in mind. And if people ask, like, hey, what do you know about this item? You could say, hey, well, I did a Quick Opinion. I paid I think Quick Opinion prices start at like $10 or so and then go up. Hey, I paid the money. They think it's likely to pass, and so I can base it on that, because the Rock autographs are not cheap. I went ahead and did some research on that, and Rock autographs, typically start around $250 on up, and that's for like signed photographs and stuff like that. So cards are probably comparable. They're not cheap, is my point. So hopefully that comes out of there. I'm not here to rip on these guys, but that's, if it were me and I bought it in a collection, I would not look to sell it without having some sort of provenance or an opinion from one of those companies. Just my thoughts on that. As like I said, I think they tend to be pretty good guys. All right, third topic tonight, in-show grading. So I have the dollar amounts that 4 of the major grading companies are charging, basically for you to drop off your cards at the show and get them back by the end of the show. And there's a pretty good range in these prices. And so let's go through these, starting with the cheapest option. So the first option is CGC. They announced that they were going to be charging $20 per card for the end of the show. So the way this works, and my suggestions, and I cannot emphasize this enough, if you're going to submit any cards at the National that you want back from the grading companies by the end of the show, meaning Sunday, get them in on Wednesday or Thursday. Because the issue is, and the thing that you need to keep in mind is, that they will cut off the submissions at a certain number of cards. And they don't always let you know how many cards that's going to be. So in other words, once they have the amount of cards that they think that they can complete by the end of the day on Sunday, they won't take any more for on-site grading. Now, you may still be able to submit them to the company and get them sent back to you later, but if you want them by the end of the show, in other words, you don't want cards in the mail at all, you don't want to mail them to the company, you don't want to be mailed back to you, then keep that in mind. I would suggest Wednesday, submitting them already on Wednesday, but if it's me personally, no later than Thursday to get those submitted to those companies to make sure you get them back, and that you make sure that you get them in before they cut those off, because they will. So with CGC, back to them, so $20 a card. One thing with their deal, though, is that they have a $1,000 limit on the value of the card. So when you submit a card to them, if you wanted to do this, 1, you'd submit it Wednesday, Thursday, and 2, the value of that card after it's graded is not to exceed $1,000. So if you were to submit something that was over that dollar amount, they could potentially upcharge you. And I think the next level up is around $50, $55. Don't quote me on that, but it's in that range. It's more than $20 is the point. Okay, so that's your first option for end of the show grading. SGC is also going to be there, and they are going to be doing their in-show grading for $35. So in other words, you hand them your cards, you submit them, you get them back by the end of the show for $35. BGS is going to be there as well, the Beckett Grading Service. They're going to be there for $100. So it's going to be $100 for Beckett. I know in the past that's been kind of a popular piece, especially for, baseball prospects, high-end prospect cards where people really look at those autographs, as an example. I know a lot of people have used that service with BGS for that purpose in the past, is just one example. And then PSA is the highest on this list at $150. Now, PSA is another company that will set dollar limits on what you can submit at that level. So you can look up on PSA's website or on the national website to see what those exact numbers are. I don't have them in front of me at the moment. And PSA will also upcharge if you submit something at a lower service level that's actually more valuable. Now, that's not an exact science. They don't always upcharge if you make an error in that regard. But I've had it happen to me twice. I can give you an example. 2018, I bought an Optic Patrick Mahomes rookie, just a base rookie, for like $5. I ended up getting it graded through PSA. I sent it in at like the lowest service level. I think the max on that through my group sub was maybe like $200, $250, something like that. And it graded a PSA 10. Well, by the time I got it back, he had been doing so well, and that card like skyrocketed in price. It was worth $1,000. So they did upcharge me. I think I had to pay an extra $40 to have that card graded since it was a PSA 10. Now, there are people that don't like the upcharge whatsoever. You'll hear a lot of complaints about that. Like, I don't understand why these companies would charge me any more money just because my card does well. I have two counterpoints to that. One, these companies, PSA included, let you know this in advance. It is transparent. They tell you in advance that, hey, these are the dollar limits. If you exceed these, we have the right to upcharge you. So it's transparent. There's no secret. They're not like, there's nothing secretive about this process. It's fully transparent. That's the first piece. The second piece is, like in the case of that Mahomes, I had no problem paying the extra $40 because the value of my card went up significantly because it was a PSA 10. And so, I get that people don't like the upcharges, but in that situation, I was not going to complain about an extra $40 when my card went from about $30, including the grading fee, to $1,000. I was good with that. Totally fine with it. So those are my counters to those particular complaints about upcharges. Topic 4 for tonight. I went to Meijer today in Fremont, Michigan, and I had some sticker shock. So I went to their retail wax section and looked at the boxes. They had select basketball megas. So I was kind of excited when I saw those until I saw the price. $60. There are 4 cards per pack, 8 packs per box, 32 cards. When you include tax, you're looking at a couple dollars a card. And I'm not super huge on that rookie class outside of Banchero. So I couldn't buy them. I really wanted to get a couple megas, but that's just way too high for me. If they're in a $40 range, somewhere around there, I probably would, 40, 45. 60 is just way too high for me. I saw Prism basketball too with Steph Curry on the box, this year's Prism, and they had select blasters as well, $40 a piece. Now keep in mind, if you've watched my other videos, I was buying retail wax and blasters were $20. When they're $30, it's like, oof, that's kind of a stretch, but it's like, okay, well, 30 I can understand. When they're $35, that's getting a little high. $40, like, no, I'm just not going to buy them. So I passed on them. I walked out of there without buying any cards. So a little bit bummed about that, but I can tell you this, if we flash forward a year into 2024, I bet you I wouldn't have seen a single one of those boxes on the shelf, because if Victor Wembanyama has the type of rookie year that people expect, it is going to be very, very hard to find retail wax 1 year from today. In my opinion, I'm quite confident that that's going to be the case. And so I think this is a temporary piece. I think that the retail wax from this year is going to drop in price, if I had to guess. I think I'll be able to find some of it cheaper than retail over time. But next year's next year's product, I should say, is probably going to end that trend, would be my guess. So, a little bit of sticker shock today. Last topic. I've been reading some things and watching video clips about hobby risk. I've seen some people posting about how, take a look at these cards because they pose, little to no risk to people that are buying their cards or investing in their cards. In my opinion, there's not really much of any type of card that has no risk. So what I'm trying to say is there's risk to buying any type of card. But I do not want to collect that way where I'm worried about card values, short or long term, and it's having an impact like on my finances in the short term, and I don't want to have to rely on them going up in value in the long term either. I just don't want to collect that way. If we learned anything from COVID, it's that I can't think of a single card that was safe from these price drops. Can you? I realize this is rhetorical because this is a video, but you can feel free to post in the comments if you can think of anything. The biggest cards in the hobby have dropped in price pretty significantly. So if you bought in the peak, it's pretty rough. And and this isn't me like jabbing you on that or anything like that. But my point is, putting big money into cards can leave anybody open for a huge risk. Example, Michael Jordan rookie cards. PSA 8s got up to like 15,000, 20,000 during COVID. Now they're back down to like 7,000 or 8,000, which is still great. But man, if you bought in the peak, that's an iconic card, that 86 Fleer Jordan rookie. And that even dropped essentially in half or more. So I just don't want to think about the risk I'm taking when I'm buying these cards, because I'm buying these cards because I really love to collect. And that's kind of my bottom line. And so I don't feel stressed when I'm collecting cards, because that's the mindset that I go into this with. That's kind of my bottom line tonight. So I hope you guys had a great night. Getting really excited because that Lansing show is coming up soon. It's coming up Saturday, so I'm definitely going to that. Really pumped to see what types of dealers are there. See if I can kind of consolidate some stuff, as I talked about in a previous video. And as I mentioned in the last video as well, if you like these types of videos and you haven't already, if you'd consider subscribing, that would be great. And remember that the opportunities for collecting sports cards are endless.